You pull on a jacket before stepping outside. You barely notice the sleeves, pockets, lining, or collar. You only notice whether it feels comfortable. Now, remove every stitch holding it together. The sleeves fall away. The pockets open. The lining becomes a loose sheet. Your jacket hasn't lost its material. It has lost the tiny connections giving that material shape. Now imagine facing winter without a single one. There are no stores. There is no thread. There are no steel needles or instructions. You only have animal skin. You have sharp stone. You have broken bone. And freezing wind surrounds you. A hide could cover your shoulders, but it would slip whenever you ran. It would open whenever you bent. Cold wind would rush inside. So how did ancient humans turn dead skin into clothing? Who first discovered that survival could depend on one tiny hole? The answer doesn't begin with a needle. It begins with a problem hidden inside your own body. Humans are unusually exposed mammals. We have little natural insulation across most of our skin. That makes cold landscapes brutally unforgiving. A fire could protect one place. Clothing could carry protection everywhere. But the earliest clothing almost certainly vanished. Skin rots, sinew decays, plant fiber disappears, stone survives for hundreds of thousands of years. A soft coat usually leaves nothing. That creates a strange archaeological mystery. We know ancient people needed protection, yet the protection itself rarely survives. So scientists searched for evidence that couldn't rot. They found part of the answer living on us. Clothing lice spend their lives inside garments. Head lice remain close to hair. Genetic research suggests those populations separated at least 83,000 years ago. The separation may have begun nearly 170,000 years ago. That doesn't reveal the first coat, but it suggests clothing became a regular human environment remarkably early. Think about that. Our clothes disappeared, but their parasites preserved the memory. Wearing a skin, however, isn't the same as stitching one. The first challenge was turning fresh hide into usable material. Fresh skin is wet, it is greasy, it is heavy, and it quickly begins to decay. Left untreated, it stiffens, it cracks, it smells, and it attracts scavengers. Ancient workers had to remove flesh and fat. They scraped the inner surface repeatedly. They stretched the hide. They softened it. They worked it again and again. This wasn't casual labor. One mistake could tear material from an entire hunt. At Contrebandiers Cave in Morocco, archaeologists found specialized bone tools. They dated between 120,000 and 90,000 years ago. Several were shaped from ribs. They became smooth, spatula-like implements. Their wear patterns fit hide and leather working. Nearby carnivore bones carried skinning marks. The marks matched the removal of fur. The animals included foxes, jackals, and wildcats. Early humans weren't merely eating animals. They were selecting skins. They were processing them with specialized tools. But here's the strange part. A beautifully prepared hide still doesn't fit a moving human body. Shoulders rotate. Knees bend, hands grip, feet strike uneven ground. A loose skin fights every movement. To become clothing, flat material had to become three-dimensional. That required planning before the first hole appeared. Someone had to imagine separate pieces becoming one shape. They needed to cut around limbs. They needed openings for heads. They needed openings for hands. They needed seams placed where movement wouldn't tear them apart. In other words, stitching began inside the mind. The tool came later. Before eyed needles, ancient humans could use pointed awls. An awl is simple in appearance. It is a sharpened point made from bone, stone, or wood. But its job is precise. It creates a controlled hole. It does not slice through the entire hide. A worker could punch one opening. Then cord could pass through by hand. Then came another hole. Then another. Slowly, two separate edges became one. The thread may have been sinew. It may have been plant fiber. It may have been hair. It may have been narrow strips of hide. Different materials probably served different climates and purposes. Most vanished. They left archaeologists with tools but almost no seams. That still doesn't explain how early tailors kept holes evenly spaced. Then scientists examined a strange bone from Canyars, Spain. It was about 39,600 years old. Its surface carried repeated lines of punctures. At first, those marks looked decorative. Experiments revealed something more practical. Stone points had likely pierced leather over the bone. The bone acted like a punchboard beneath the hide. One sequence created a straight line. That line was suitable for a seam. This happened long before eyed needles appeared in Europe. So the needle didn't invent tailoring. Humans were already solving the problem with separate tools. One tool made the holes. Fingers pulled the cord through. Efficient? Not exactly. Customer support hadn't been invented yet. But it worked. Now imagine making the tool itself. A useful bone point couldn't be any random splinter. It needed enough strength to push through hide. It also needed enough flexibility to avoid snapping immediately. The maker first selected a suitable bone. Long, narrow bones offered convenient blanks. Ribs could also be split and reshaped. Stone edges scraped away unwanted material. Grinding smoothed the shaft. Polishing removed rough surfaces. Those surfaces could catch inside leather. The tip remained sharp, but it could not become dangerously brittle. An eyed needle demanded another risk. A hole had to be carved into the shaft. The thin bone could not split. That required careful scraping. It required drilling. It required rotating. And it required polishing. Hours of work could disappear with one crack. Nature doesn't offer refunds. Yet people kept making them. Why invest so much effort when an awl already worked? Because an eye changed the rhythm of sewing. With an awl, piercing and threading were separate actions. With an eyed needle, cord followed the point through each opening. The tool combined two movements into one. It made sewing faster. It made sewing finer. And it made sewing more controlled. That mattered when seams became smaller. It mattered when clothing gained several layers. It mattered when fur edges needed attaching without large gaps. It mattered when every opening allowed cold air inside. The earliest known eyed needles appeared around 40,000 years ago. They appeared in northern Eurasia. Other examples later appeared across Asia and Europe. Their arrival overlaps colder regions. In those regions, fitted clothing offered enormous advantages. But cold alone doesn't explain everything. A thick hide can warm someone standing still. A hunter can't stand still. Clothing had to trap heat. It also had to allow constant movement. That meant narrower sleeves. It meant closer leggings. It meant stronger footwear. It meant protected hands. Loose coverings became complete systems. An outer layer could block wind. A softer inner layer could trap warm air. Fur could face inward for insulation. Or fur could face outward against snow. Every seam became a potential weakness. Every opening became a doorway for cold. A well-made garment didn't merely cover the body. It created a small climate around it. That may have changed where humans could live. Fire warmed the camp. Clothing warmed the entire journey. Suddenly, exposed plains became more survivable. Long winter hunts became less impossible. Families could travel farther from shelter. Hunters could remain outside longer. They no longer surrendered body heat immediately. The needle looked tiny. Its consequences were continental. At Yana in Arctic Siberia, people lived around 33,000 years ago. Their camp stood at an extraordinary northern latitude. Archaeologists found a huge collection of sewing equipment. It included 192 eyed needles and fragments. They also recovered 79 awls and fragments. Several protective needle cases survived as well. The needles appeared in different shapes and sizes. That variety suggests different tools performed different jobs. Fine needles could handle delicate garment work. Larger tools could pierce heavy hides. Those hides could become outer clothing. They could also become shelters. Think about what that means. This wasn't one clever person experimenting beside a fire. It was an established technology. It involved specialists. It required maintenance. It required storage. And it required repeated teaching. Someone knew how to choose bone. Someone understood how thin the shaft could become. Someone knew which cord tightened when wet. Someone understood where a seam would rub skin raw. We don't know who performed that work. Archaeology rarely preserves their names. It rarely preserves their ages. It rarely preserves their conversations. But sewing knowledge had to move between people. A technique this delicate couldn't restart each generation. Hands watched other hands. Children saw points being sharpened. They watched hides being prepared. Beginners probably broke tools. Experts recognized mistakes before they happened. The garment was made from animal skin. The skill was made from memory. And here's where everything changes again. Eyed needles may not have appeared only because humans needed warmth. Awls could already produce fitted garments. Needles also allowed finer thread. They created smaller holes. They allowed more precise finishing. Clothing could carry beads. It could carry pendants. It could carry fur borders. It could carry carefully arranged patterns. A coat could announce identity. A seam could show belonging. Protection slowly became presentation. That transformation feels modern. But it began deep in prehistory. Your clothes still perform both jobs. They manage temperature. They also tell strangers something about you. Ancient people likely faced the same double question. Will this keep me alive? And what will others see when I wear it? Still, almost none of those garments survived. That absence created one of archaeology's greatest illusions. We find stone points everywhere. That makes the past look dominated by hunting. We find fewer garments. We find fewer baskets. We find fewer cords. We find fewer bags and nets. Those technologies can seem less important. But survival depended on many things that rotted. The invisible past may have required more skill than the visible one. Then, in 2026, researchers described something exceptionally rare. It came from Cougar Mountain Cave in Oregon. It was a small piece of processed elk hide. Fiber cord passed through its carefully shaped edge. The cord contained plant material. It also contained animal hair. The cord continued into another hide fragment. It ended with a knot. Radiocarbon dates placed it between roughly 12,600 and 11,900 years ago. It may have belonged to clothing. It may have belonged to footwear. It could also have been part of a bag. Or it may have belonged to a portable shelter. Researchers called it the oldest known physical example of sewn hide. 12,000 years sounds ancient. But the tools used for stitching are tens of thousands of years older. The evidence from clothing lice may reach even further back. That enormous gap doesn't mean sewing disappeared. It means soft technologies usually vanish. Imagine judging our civilization only from objects surviving 10,000 years. Steel beams might remain. Plastic fragments might remain. Your favorite shirt probably wouldn't. The same distortion shapes our picture of ancient humans. We see hunters because spear points survive. We miss tailors because jackets don't. Yet a spear might feed a group for days. A carefully stitched coat could protect someone for years. It could be repaired repeatedly. It could be resized for another person. It could carry memories from one generation into the next. Every patch recorded damage that someone survived. Every replacement cord recorded a small rescue. Ancient clothing wasn't disposable fashion. It was portable shelter. It was personal equipment. And it was stored labor. A broken winter seam wasn't merely inconvenient. It could become dangerous within hours. Stitching had to be understood. It had to be maintained. And it had to be trusted. That trust began with tiny, repeated actions. Pierce the hide, pull the cord, tighten the seam, check the edge. Then repeat everything again. Thousands of movements turned flat skin into a second body. Those movements helped humans enter places our biology never designed for us. We didn't grow thick fur again. We didn't evolve stronger claws. We didn't evolve natural winter coats. We borrowed fur from other animals. Then we reshaped it using imagination. That's the real invention, not the needle itself, not even the stitch. The breakthrough was seeing nature as material. That material could be reorganized. A bone became a point. A tendon became thread. A hide became a sleeve. Several pieces became protection. No animal had ever naturally grown protection like this. You still wear that idea every day. Look closely at the seam inside your shirt. It seems ordinary. Thousands of generations solved the problem before you arrived. But every stitch carries an ancient decision. Humans didn't have to remain trapped inside the bodies evolution gave them. We could build the bodies the world required.